There are afternoons when time seems to hesitate, like a long breath taken by the universe before everything shifts course. In that moment, amid the thick fog of San Francisco in 1957, an ancient soul crossed the invisible boundary of 2,000 years. He sought out a man quietly reading financial reports, not to teach and certainly not to judge, but to ask a question. A question meant only for those brave enough to look beyond the numbers and see the future taking shape. That late afternoon, Socrates came to meet Philip Fisher. The small office building on Montgomery Street seemed cut off from the bustling rhythm outside. In a room filled with the scent of old paper and cold coffee, Philip Fisher, a man with deep-set eyes, sat at a wooden desk, intently reading an annual report from Motorola. The door opened softly. A man in a white robe stepped inside, his eyes unusually bright. No one heard his footsteps, only a stillness spreading through the room.
Please forgive the intrusion. I've heard it said that you believe stocks have souls?
Philip Fisher pauses, his eyes reflecting a rare moment of surprise.
If a soul is what allows something to grow, then perhaps, yes. I believe every great business has a spirit, a yearning that cannot be measured by numbers.
Fascinating. Then what leads you to trust that spirit rather than the market, what people call the truth of prices?
Because price reflects only the past, value is a promise of the future.
You believe in the future, but the future does not yet exist. How can one value what is not real?
Philip Fisher remained silent for a moment, as if weighing the cost of his words.
Like a gardener who looks at a seed and sees a forest. He doesn't know how each branch will grow, but he knows that within the seed there is life. I look only for businesses with such seeds.
And what to you is that seed?
People, the capacity for innovation, ethics, and aspiration. I don't buy stocks, I invest in people.
An investor who speaks like a philosopher. But do you think faith in the future can sometimes be an illusion?
Of course, but without belief there's nothing to plant. Fear never creates invention.
Socrates turns his gaze toward the distance.
So you invest with faith, not with reason?
No, I use reason to test faith. I speak with employees, customers, competitors. I want to know whether that corporate soul is real. I call it the scuttlebutt method, seeking truth through conversation.
Socrates nods gently, as if acknowledging what he has just heard.
A philosopher does much the same, seeking truth through dialogue. Perhaps you and I differ only in our subjects. I question people, you question companies.
Yet both of us pursue what cannot be measured, the true essence.
What do you think of patience? Most people on Wall Street act as if tomorrow were the end of the world.
Patience is the most underestimated skill in investing. Most want to harvest before they sow. I hold stocks for decades, as long as the business preserves the soul I first believed in.
So you do not invest to beat the market.
Beating the market is the goal of the short-sighted. I invest to accompany growth, like a father watching his child grow. Each year is different, yet it is still the same child. And if that child loses its way, I ask why before I leave. Sometimes patience is understanding, not stubbornness.
Socrates nods gently.
I understand now, Philip. You don't invest in stocks. You invest in the belief that people can become better.
And you, Socrates, do you believe knowledge is the same?
I believe knowledge is never complete. It only evolves, like businesses, like people, like the very soul of the market itself.
Fisher nods slightly.
Perhaps investing and philosophy differ only in language. One speaks in numbers, the other in questions, yet both seek the same thing, the truth hidden in time.
When Socrates left the office, night had already fallen over San Francisco. He saw the lights from the financial buildings reflected on the surface of the bay, like thousands of torches carried by people searching for the future. He smiled. Human beings are always investing in stocks, in knowledge, in love, in the belief that tomorrow will be better than today. And it is this belief, not profit, that keeps the world in motion. Decades later, Warren Buffett, the young disciple of Benjamin Graham, came to read Fisher's books. He realized that within this faith in the future lay something that quietly reshaped the way humanity thinks about investing. Not buying cheap to sell dear, but walking alongside true value as it grows. Perhaps somewhere between the folds of time, Socrates is still smiling, watching the seeds of belief planted by Fisher taking root across the world.
There are evenings when the world seems to mute its noise, leaving only the warm glow of yellow light falling upon old pages, and time stands still as if listening. In the dim stillness of the Columbia Library, winter's cold settling over dust-laden shelves, an ancient soul crossed 2,000 years, moving quietly like the shadow of a thought not yet named. He sought out a man facing the sharp lines of price charts, not to teach nor to judge, but to touch a question meant for those who dare to seek truth amid chaos. That night, Socrates came to meet Benjamin Graham.
Among the dust-covered shelves of the Columbia Library, the dim yellow light fell upon an open copy of The Intelligent Investor. Benjamin Graham sat in deep thought before the stock price chart of General Electric, his eyes marked by sleepless nights. A gentle voice sounded behind him.
"What are you searching for in those jagged lines, Benjamin?"
Graham paused slightly, a look of surprise crossing his eyes.
"I am searching for their intrinsic value, sir. The market may be mad, but value is not."
Value, a lovely word. But tell me, where does that value reside? In numbers, in factories, or in the hearts of those who believe in it?
Value does not live in emotion. It resides in real cash flows, tangible assets, and genuine profits.
Then are you saying that the soul of a business is its ledger?
Not exactly, but it is the only place where truth can be verified. The market, by contrast, is like a madman, sometimes euphoric, sometimes terrified. I call him Mr. Market.
An imaginary character, or rather a mirror of humanity itself?
Both. Every day, Mr. Market knocks on my door, shouting prices to buy or sell. When he is euphoric, stocks are driven too high. When he is despairing, I am given the chance to buy cheaply. The secret is not to let him rule my mind.
Then your lesson is not about finance, but about self-mastery.
You may be right. Investing, in the end, is more a test of temperament than of mathematics.
I like that. You have learned the art of knowing yourself, not chasing the crowd, not selling your soul to emotion.
Yet at times I doubt myself. When markets collapse, when panic spreads, I ask, does intrinsic value still matter if no one believes in it?
A profound question, Benjamin. When people cease to believe in value, you yourself must become that value. You do not invest merely to earn returns. You invest to preserve order amid chaos.
Graham grew pensive, his gaze distant.
Order amid chaos. Perhaps value investing is a form of ethics, is it not?
Indeed. A true investor does not merely buy stocks. He invests in the belief that reason still exists in a mad world.
The room sank into silence. Outside the window, snow began to fall. Socrates rose, smiled, and said softly, "When you know the value of what you own, you will no longer be swept away by the prices others shout." Benjamin Graham did not merely teach the world how to value businesses. He taught us how to value ourselves. In every crisis, that lesson still echoes. When emotion speaks, reason must remain at the helm. And on that snowy night, the seed Graham planted began to root in the mind of a young student, Warren Buffett. One day, that seed would grow into an entire forest of financial philosophy that humanity would come to call value investing. There are summer nights when the air seems to thicken, as if time itself were holding its breath to watch a young man struggling with his own ambitions. In a small room in Omaha in 1950, amid the incessant chorus of cicadas and the glow of a desk lamp falling over thick books, an ancient soul crossed the invisible boundary of 2,000 years. He sought out a young man determined to beat the world, not to stop him, nor to praise him, but to pose a question. A question meant for those who believe that defeating others is the same as defeating oneself. That night, Socrates came to meet Warren Buffett. Omaha, summer of 1950. A sweltering night, Cicadas droned outside the wooden window frame. In the small room, the desk lamp cast its light over a thick stack of books, The Intelligent Investor, Security Analysis, and Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits. Warren Buffett, 20 years old, eyes burning bright, pencil in hand, was feverishly jotting down numbers, ratios, and profit charts. He whispered, "If Graham can find undervalued stocks, I can do even better. I'll beat the market, beat even him." A strange wind swept through the room. The lamp tilted, and a figure in a white robe appeared by the window, serene face, eyes bright as if holding the whole sky of Athens.
Who are you fighting, young man?
Buffett looks slightly surprised.
I'm trying to figure out how to beat the market. Who are you?
I am one who has been dead for more than 2,000 years, yet still searches for truth. And you, what do you think you are seeking?
I'm searching for the perfect way to invest, the way to defeat everyone else.
Defeat them? For what purpose?
That's the nature of the game. Whoever is better wins.
So you believe the market is a game?
Buffett pauses for a moment.
Isn't it? The smart win, the foolish lose.
And when the smart man wins, what happens to his greed?
Perhaps it grows.
Then when you win, you lose. And when you lose, you learn. Do you call that a game or a lesson?
I hadn't thought of it that way. But if I don't try to win, why should I invest at all?
Have you heard of a man named Graham?
Of course, he's my teacher. I'm learning his methods to pick good stocks, value them correctly, and optimize returns.
And you believe that by learning everything he knows, you will surpass him?
I think so.
But Graham never tried to surpass anyone. He tried only to surpass himself, to overcome fear and greed. Can you do that, young man?
Buffett reflects for a moment.
I am not sure.
Then you have not yet understood your teacher. A student who wishes to surpass the master must first understand why the master never wished to defeat anyone at all.
But if I don't beat the market, how can I become rich?
What is wealth?
Having more than others.
Then if everyone has more than yesterday, yet you still have less than they do, are you poor?
Well, perhaps not.
Then you need not be richer than anyone, only richer than your own yesterday. And then you will see, investing is not about beating the market, but about freeing yourself from it.
Buffett lowers his gaze to the notebooks in front of him.
Still, I believe I can choose stocks better than others.
Perhaps, but remember, no one can consistently win a game ruled by human emotion unless he understands his own emotions first. You wish to invest, Buffett, then invest in patience, clarity, and simplicity. As for stocks, let time do its work.
A gentle breeze passed through. Socrates smiled and faded into the silver moonlight beyond the window. Buffett sat still and wrote on a fresh page. Today I learned something numbers cannot teach. The market is not my enemy. It is my mirror. Many years later, people would call Warren Buffett the sage of Omaha. Few knew that in his youth he had once been an impatient young man, eager to prove he was smarter than everyone else. From those lonely nights, the questions of Socrates, "What is wealth? Who are you fighting?" planted the seeds of the simple life and long-term investing philosophy he would later embody. Buffett did not defeat the market. He learned how to stop fighting it. And in that moment, he became the freest man on Wall Street. There are winter days when cold light falls like a gentle reminder. Time does not merely pass, it settles in the places where human beings reflect most deeply. In the Berkshire office in 2020, amid financial reports, shareholder letters, and a still fizzing can of Coca-Cola, an ancient soul stepped into the silence, not from the past nor from the future, but from the realm of human contemplation itself. He came to a 90-year-old man, writing the distilled lessons of a lifetime, not to praise him, nor to test him, but to ask one final question. A question meant for those who have reached the summit and are lucid enough to point out an easier path for the generation that follows. On that winter night, Socrates came once more to meet Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett sat quietly before the manuscript of his 55th shareholder letter, the one in which he devoted much of his words to emphasizing a startling truth. Most investors would do better simply by buying the entire market and holding it for a very long time. This was no longer advice from a 90-year-old legend. It was the summation of a lifetime of experience, a philosophy distilled from 6 decades of observing human nature and markets. As he set down his pen, a gentle presence had somehow already taken a seat nearby. Socrates smiled. The dialogue about that difficult truth began.
You spent a lifetime beating the market, only to advise others not to try to beat it. Warren, is that the pinnacle of wisdom? If you ask that question, you already understand half of it. The other half is this. I realized that being capable does not mean everyone must try to be capable in the same way. So you are saying that what you achieved should not be something others attempt to replicate? Exactly. Just as you, Socrates, asked great questions, but you never expected every citizen of Athens to become Socrates. I spent my life reading financial reports, analyzing businesses, and accumulating a mountain of mistakes. Ordinary people do not need that journey to live a good life. Yet people believe in legends. They see you beat the market and conclude, I can do that too. That is the tragedy of misunderstanding. If I were born again, I might not be able to do what I once did. The market I conquered has transformed many times. But low costs, discipline, and an acceptance of simplicity, those remain true in any era. Simplicity is an eternal truth, at least in investing, and in life as well. Do you ever feel regret seeing so many chase secrets, Wall Street methods, and market-beating strategies? I regret only this. The simplest words are the ones people least want to hear. I tell them, buy an S&P 500 index fund and hold it for life. And they still ask, is there a better stock? Like a patient told by a doctor to walk every day, who then asks, is there a faster pill? Exactly. People want different results without different habits. Even in investing, they want freedom, yet they despise the boredom that freedom requires. Explain that, Warren. Freedom is boring. Financial freedom looks like this: slow, steady, repetitive, dull. Put money into an index fund, forget it, and go do what you love. No thrills, no drama. But people crave the feeling of being smarter, better, more special.
So you are asking them to give up the desire to be a hero? No, I want them to be heroes in a different way. Not heroes who beat the market, but heroes who conquer their own impatience. That is the harder battle, isn't it? 100 times harder. The market is only a mirror. The ego, greed, and fear, that is the labyrinth. Then tell me, Warren, after a lifetime of investing, what is the greatest lesson you have learned? That wisdom lies not in winning, but in knowing which games do not need to be won.
Socrates closes his eyes, letting a few seconds pass in silence.
You have just spoken the spirit of philosophy, to know what you do not know, and to know what does not need to be known. Then you have just captured the spirit of passive investing. You spent your life selecting businesses. Why then do you want others to abandon selection altogether? Because most people do not know what they are doing. Passive investing, beneath its cloak of boredom, contains a profound humility. I do not know which company will win. I only know that the human economy will keep moving forward. A faith in the future and in people. Without believing that tomorrow will be better than today, investing has no meaning at all. And what gives you that faith? You have lived through the Cold War, recessions, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 crisis. What sustains it?
Buffett quietly looks out the window.
Because I have seen people rise again and again. Even in the darkest moments, someone is still building, creating, loving, hoping. We are a species of renewal. How curious! The man regarded as the world's greatest investor advises most people not to invest the way he did. Socrates, I am the exception. Passive strategy is for 99% of humanity. I do not want them to walk into the traps I was fortunate enough to escape. Not everyone needs to become Buffett, but anyone can become free. Do you see that this is the legacy you leave behind? Not Berkshire Hathaway, not the deals, not the title, Oracle of Omaha. If there is a legacy, it is this. I tried my best to help ordinary people live ordinary lives that are sufficiently fulfilled.
Warren, do you ever think that your final victory was not beating the market, but overcoming your own ego? If leaving the spotlight to encourage others to live simply is called overcoming the ego, then perhaps it is. Wisdom does not belong to the one who climbs the highest, but to the one who reaches the summit and points out an easier path for those who follow.
Buffett smiles calmly.
I only hope they live better lives than I did.
Warren Buffett spent a lifetime proving that the greatest victories are not always found in glamorous battles, but in the courage to let go at the right moment. At the end of the journey, he did not boast of legendary deals or years of market outperformance. He spoke instead of simplicity, discipline, and humility. In that winter room in Omaha, we do not see merely a Wall Street legend. We see an elderly man, calm as a still lake, who spent 90 years earning the right to say a sentence that sounds ordinary but costs a lifetime to understand. You do not need to beat the market to win at life. There are afternoons when the last light of day flows into a quiet room like time itself slowing down, revealing what busy lives so often overlook. Within that space, where philosophy books rest beside financial reports, where psychology meets economics, an ancient soul crossed the silence as lightly as the arrival of a thought not yet named.
He sought out a man patiently reading page after page, as if the entire world deserved to be reconsidered. Not to examine him, nor to test him, but to pose a question meant for those who believe that wisdom is born not of speed, but of slowness. That late afternoon, Socrates came to meet Charlie Munger.
You seem to read a great deal, Charlie. I once told my students the unexamined life is not worth living, and you, it seems, live in order to examine everything.
I'm simply trying to understand the world before the world makes me pay for not understanding it, Socrates. I don't read to find novelty. I read to connect what is already known. Wisdom, as you once said, does not come from stuffing the mind, but from thinking slowly.
Then where does your investment wisdom come from? Knowledge, experience, or mistakes?
All of them. But above all, patience. Today, people want to get rich in 6 months, while I am willing to wait 6 years, or 60. The modern world is obsessed with speed, but speed does not create wisdom. It only creates the illusion of progress.
So you believe patience is the path to clarity?
Not only to clarity, to freedom. The impatient are ruled by time. The patient make time serve them. I often tell Buffett, we don't need to do many things right. Just avoid doing too many stupid things. And wait.
Fascinating. In my time, many wished to become wise quickly. They memorized the words of philosophers, but refused to live by their truths. In your time, people wish to become rich quickly. They learn a few investing formulas, but refuse to live by their principles.
Exactly. I call it the action bias, a common disease among investors. When they don't know what to do, they do something. They mistake busyness for wisdom, when in fact it is only a fear of stillness.
A fear of stillness. A wonderful phrase. Are you speaking of humanity's deeper fear of sitting still without knowing whether the future will reward them?
Yes, but the greatest rewards in investing do not go to the smartest, but to the most disciplined. Buffett and I often say, the market is the place where money moves from the impatient to the patient.
Sounds like a paradox of your age. People live longer, yet are less patient. They have more information, yet understand less, because they refuse to let time work for them. I call it modern stupidity, the belief that every problem can be solved with speed. But investing, like life, is a game of delayed gratification. Those who can delay win. Then, do you think patience is a skill that can be trained?
Absolutely. Start by not reacting immediately to everything. When markets fall, sit down and read. When others panic, ask why. When emotion urges action, let reason respond. Patience is not waiting, it is waiting with awareness.
That sentence deserves to be carved above the gates of Delphi, Charlie. I wonder if the ancient Greeks had known stock investing, would they have been as patient as you?
Perhaps not. They would have argued endlessly over whether to buy shares in olive oil or wine, but they would certainly have understood this. Time is the friend of the wonderful business and the enemy of the mediocre one.
So what is your greatest secret to investing?
I have no secrets. I simply try to avoid stupid mistakes, read more, act less, and remain patient longer. If I had to condense it into one line, I'd say, patience is the forgotten virtue, but it is the one that separates dreamers from the truly free.
Socrates turns his gaze toward the distance.
In my time, people debated what virtue was. In yours, they have forgotten that patience is a virtue at all. Perhaps in every age, humanity is the same. We want results without the journey. And that is why we repeat the same mistakes forever. Socrates, you know, if you lived today, you might not be sentenced to drink hemlock, but you might be ignored for saying things that do not help people get rich quickly.
Socrates smiles sadly, as if truth always comes at a cost.
Perhaps I would still speak, for what humanity needs is not more opportunity, but more patience to wait for the right one.
The sunset stretched across the wooden desk, lengthening the final shadows of the day. Socrates rose and bowed gently to his old friend, as if knowledge itself required a small ritual before falling silent. In that moment, he left behind a whisper. Patience is not waiting for something to happen. It is continuing to sow seeds even when no one can yet see the field growing. Charlie Munger smiled, lifting his familiar can of Diet Coke, and softly, like a secret that needs no hiding. That, he said, is happiness, Socrates.
There are nights when the lights of Wall Street blaze as if to conceal the chaos beneath, where people chase profits with a haste they scarcely understand themselves. Amid that sea of light, in a small office at Wellington Management in 1974, there was a corner of uncommon stillness. A man stood before a whiteboard, writing a question so simple it felt dangerous. In that moment, an ancient soul crossed the boundary of time, not to warn or to judge, but simply to listen to a truth taking shape. A truth for those bold enough to believe that moving slowly with the market may be wiser than trying to defeat it. That night, Socrates came to meet John C. Bogle.
At Wellington Management, John C. Bogle sat alone before a whiteboard dense with formulas. The coffee had gone cold. He stared at the line he had just written. Why try to beat the market when you can simply own the whole market? At that moment, a voice sounded behind him, low, warm, and familiar, as if echoing from thousands of years ago.
A simple question, yet one that could change the world. Who taught you to ask it, John?
Bogle turned around. Before him stood a man in a gray cloak, eyes deep as though they held the entire sky of ancient Athens.
I don't know who you are, but I'm trying to save people from their own greed.
I have seen this in every age. Humans always believe they are special, that they can defeat the many. But tell me, John, why do you believe they cannot?
Because I have the data. 90% of active funds underperform the market over 10 years, and yet that doesn't stop them from believing they will be the remaining 10%. People refuse to accept being average.
Ah, because they fear dissolving into the crowd.
Exactly. But the paradox is this: chasing being special is precisely what makes them mediocre. I want to help them accept a simple truth. Moving with the market is wiser than trying to defeat it.
So you wish to teach people to let go?
Not to let go, to practice discipline and humility. Passive investing is not laziness. It is humility before the greatness of the market.
Socrates smiles, a look of understanding in his eyes.
You speak more like a philosopher than a financier, John. But tell me, if everyone invested passively, who would make the market function?
A wonderful question. But I don't need everyone to believe. The market only needs a few overconfident souls to keep it in balance. As for me, I care about the rest, those who want a peaceful life and still wish to share in the collective result.
You are teaching people how to grow wealthy without gambling. An idea so simple it is mocked, yet so powerful it cannot be forgotten.
Do you know what they call me? The inventor of the Fool's Fund.
And that is the finest thing they could have said. For in a world where everyone strives to prove they are smart, only those brave enough to appear foolish can see the truth.
John C. Bogle did not merely create the first index fund, he gave birth to an entirely new investment philosophy. Trust the market and remain steadfast with it. When others mocked him, he quietly founded Vanguard Group with a vision for the investors, not for Wall Street. Bogle never became as wealthy as Buffett, nor as famous as Soros, yet hundreds of millions around the world grew wealthier because of him, without ever knowing his name. That is the power of Bogle's philosophy, to free people from the illusion that they can control everything. They are winter afternoons when the pale light falls like a quiet reminder that time is closing a circle, not hurriedly, but gently, like a hand resting on one's shoulder. In a small room in Pennsylvania in 2018, with snow blanketing the world beyond the window, an ancient soul crossed the silence, light as a memory returning precisely when it is needed. He came to a man who had spent his entire life sowing simple seeds in the heart of humanity, not to speak final words, nor to offer comfort, but to witness how a life arrives at its own completeness. On that winter afternoon, Socrates came to meet John C. Bogle again. Outside, winter covered the world in white snow. John C. Bogle, frail now, sat on his familiar wooden chair. Dim light fell across a face lined with age, yet gentle. By the window stood a figure in an ancient cloak, Socrates, wearing a smile that seemed never to have left this world.
You have sown the seeds, John, and the world has grown full of forests. But when you look at those forests, are you satisfied?
Bogle smiles faintly, as if he had anticipated the question.
Shouldn't I be, sir? ETFs have helped millions invest at low cost and freed them from chasing greedy brokers. Yet sometimes I see ETFs turned into games. People buy not because they understand, but because they fear missing out.
A philosophy, once it leaves the hands of its founder, will be tested by the world. So it was with my own philosophy, distorted across centuries. What matters is not that it is misunderstood, but whether anyone still dares to live by its original spirit. That original spirit was faith in real value and in time. Passive investing is not abandonment, but trust that the nature of the market, like human nature, has its own way of returning to balance. And yet now people want to be rich in a single day because they forget that time is the fairest teacher of all. No one is deceived by time, only their own greed. You taught them how to sow, but no one wishes to wait for the harvest.
Bogle looks out the window, his gaze growing pensive.
I spent my entire life telling them, don't try to beat the market, make friends with it. But it seems that more people join, the fewer friends the market has. Because human nature does not change, John. We may invent new tools, but at heart it is still a battle between reason and instinct. You gave the world a mirror. Those who use it to examine themselves will grow wiser. Those who use it to dress up their greed will fall once again.
A long silence. Only the wind howled outside.
Do you think, after I am gone, anyone will still preserve that spirit of simplicity? They will, John. Every time a young person asks, do I truly need to run faster than everyone else? You live again in their mind.
Bogle nodded softly, his eyes glistening.
You know, Socrates, when I read your words about knowledge, I know that I know nothing. I understood. Investing is the same. No one knows the future, but the wisest person is the one who knows that he does not know, and therefore acts with humility. And that humility has made you greater than any prophet.
The room brightened with a soft glow. Socrates stepped back toward the door, dissolving into the falling snow.
Thank you for coming back. I think this time I am truly ready to leave. No, John, you are not leaving. You are simply moving elsewhere, to a place where time continues to invest in the souls of those who believe.
When John C. Bogle passed away in 2019, millions of investors around the world bid him farewell with a single image, a steadily rising curve over time, the symbol of faith in steadfastness and simplicity. In a world of constant turbulence, he left behind a reminder: the market is a machine that transfers money from the impatient to the patient. And in the philosophy of Socrates, perhaps he found this truth: the wise are not those who know many things, but those who know what is worth waiting for. There are nights when the city sleeps, but human thought remains awake. Chicago, 1965, was such a night. In the quiet corridors of the University of Chicago, the last yellow lights were still on in the finance laboratory. There, a young man sat facing endless columns of numbers, as if he were trying to listen to the market's hidden heartbeat through its smallest fluctuations. Eugene Fama did not yet know that when a person honestly confronts data and lets go of illusion, the world will eventually send him a teacher. And so, at the very moment when the tapping of the keyboard faded away, Socrates stepped into the room, not to teach anything new, but to ask the very question that Fama had already prepared himself to hear. The finance laboratory at the University of Chicago was filled with stacks of printed charts, stock price curves rising and falling like the heartbeat of the entire economy. A young man, brown-haired, with sharp eyes and the quiet resolve of a true scientist, sat before an old IBM computer. He typed line after line of code, each keystroke echoing through the stillness of the campus night. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind him. In the dim yellow light stood the face of Socrates, aged yet radiant, as if he had stepped straight out of an ancient dream.
What are you observing, Eugene?
Eugene flinched briefly, then quickly regained his composure.
I'm studying stock price data, thousands of data points across many years. I want to know whether there is any pattern, something that would allow us to predict the future.
And have you found anything?
I've found perfect chaos. No rules, no cycles, no enduring patterns. Every movement is like a roll of the dice, random, yet not meaningless.
A beautiful conclusion, for you have seen that order is not the enemy of randomness, but its highest form.
You speak like a philosopher, but I want to prove it with data. When I analyze thousands of stock prices, I see that new information is reflected almost instantly in prices. No one can consistently exploit it to outperform.
Then those who claim to foresee the market are merely gambling with their own illusions.
Eugene nods slightly.
Exactly. They may be right occasionally, but never forever. Because each time they are right, the market learns from that very mistake and becomes smarter.
A self-adjusting living organism. Are you saying the market has a soul?
Eugene hesitates, a hint of uncertainty in his eyes.
If a soul is the sum of countless individual actions, then perhaps yes. Because the market is not a machine, but a collective of human beings, erroneous together, correcting together, evolving together.
I see you are not only a scientist, but a philosopher, for you have understood this. The market is not efficient because humans are perfect, but efficient precisely because humans learn from their mistakes. And that is why I believe active investing, trying to beat the market, is futile in the long run. Wisdom lies in moving with the market, owning it entirely, rather than selecting in ignorance.
Socrates narrows his eyes thoughtfully and nods softly.
Like a farmer sowing an entire field rather than clutching individual seeds, he accepts the risks of nature and receives the reward of the harvest.
Exactly. And I believe that within this seemingly irrational chaos lies a very pure form of freedom. No one controls the market, and therefore no one is imprisoned by it.
And thus you have described the philosophy of economic freedom, a world that needs no heroes, no prophets, only people humble enough to walk alongside truth rather than try to lead it. When Eugene Fama defended his doctoral dissertation in 1965, many in the financial world scoffed. Efficient markets? Then what are we all doing on Wall Street? But 3 decades later, when millions of ordinary people began investing through index funds, when passive strategies reshaped global finance, the world finally understood. Fama's theory did not kill risk-taking. It freed humanity from the illusion of victory. And somewhere in the memory of time, Socrates smiles. Randomness is not the enemy of intelligence, but the test that teaches intelligence humility. There are moments in a human life when time seems to soften, opening a narrow crack between two worlds. That night, amid papers scattered like a storm and a confidence that had just collapsed, Ray Dalio sat alone in an empty office. The quiet mist of the 1982 evening pressed gently against the window panes, And from that fragile fissure between despair and the greatest question of his life, a figure stepped forward, unhurried, composed, as if 2,000 years of philosophy had bent down to listen to the confusion of a single human being. Socrates arrived, not to offer comfort, but to ask.
(1982). The U.S. economy was rebounding powerfully from recession. The stock market surged beyond all expectations. Yet, in a corner of an office so empty it felt cold to the bone at Bridgewater Associates, then sustained by only a handful of employees, Ray Dalio sat in stunned silence. On his desk lay the forecasting models that had once convinced him America was heading toward a second Great Depression. He had believed. He had staked his reputation on that belief, and he was wrong. The door opened softly. A figure entered, without sound, without grandeur, carrying only a calmness that suggested he had been watching for a long time.
You seem to be speaking with the darkness, Ray Dalio.
Ray Dalio looks up, carrying the weariness of decisions that have come at a cost.
If the darkness were willing to listen, it might be kinder than the investors who have turned their backs on me. I was certain I was right, and now I've lost everything.
What have you lost?
Money, reputation, trust, and pride. I once thought I was a genius. Now I see only a fool wearing the mask of intelligence.
Then this is good, for only when a fool knows he is a fool can he begin to become wise.
You speak as if you are comforting me.
I comfort no one. I merely point to the truth. Error is not the enemy, it is the mirror. And when you have the courage to look into it, you will see your own evolution.
But I did everything logically. I analyzed the data, built models, read every report. How could I still be wrong?
Because you forgot what data cannot measure. Humility. You believed you had grasped all the variables, but the world is a river, Ray. Measure it in the morning, and by afternoon its course has changed.
Ray hesitates, a hint of uncertainty in his eyes.
So, what should I do when I cannot know everything?
Begin by accepting that you do not know. Only then can you build a system that does not depend on your personal intelligence, but on truth that can be tested.
Truth? Tested by whom?
By those who are not you. By other minds, other angles, other challenges you cannot generate alone. You do not need to be right. You need no one among you to be wrong in isolation.
Ray looks up, his eyes alight with curiosity.
Mean, instead of relying on my own correctness, I must build a system that transcends me?
A collective intelligence, a machine in which mistakes are not buried but exposed to become fuel for evolution.
Bridgewater. I named the firm A Bridge Over Troubled Waters to signify crossing market turbulence. But only now do I see that bridge must be built from bricks of truth, not from my ego.
It is time to build another bridge between arrogance and humility, between belief and scientific doubt, between personal opinion and reality independent of any person.
You know, at the moment I lost nearly everything, I realized something terrifying. I believed my forecasts so deeply that I treated them as truth. I no longer saw them as hypotheses to be tested. That was the fatal blind spot.
The greatest blind spot of intelligence is believing it is already enlightened. Only those who know they can be wrong can see possibilities others overlook.
So, this failure could be a good thing?
Not merely good, it is a gift. You have been granted life's rarest opportunity, the chance to rewrite how you think.
Ray closes his eyes and remains silent for a moment.
I understand. If I keep believing Ray Dalio is a genius, I will remain chained to my own opinions. But if I regard myself as someone who knows nothing, I can listen to all views to find truth.
Do you see? When the mind is no longer crowded by certainty, it becomes spacious enough for wisdom.
I want to build a company where anyone can question me, where truth stands above authority, where people argue fiercely, but not to win, only to discover what is real.
Do it, and you will find this. An organization honest about its mistakes is stronger than any genius.
Ray gives a gentle smile.
Perhaps I have just learned the most important lesson of my life. I was wrong, and I am grateful for it.
You cannot evade mistakes, Ray Dalio, but you can avoid repeating them. That is the essence of wisdom.
Thank you, Socrates. The river of markets will always change, but perhaps I can build a truly solid bridge across it.
Not just a bridge, a philosophy.
Ray Dalio was right, not in his 1982 forecast, but in how he faced his mistake. At the moment of greatest loss, he did not flee or assign blame. He used pain to write a philosophy of evolution that millions would later come to know: radical truth and radical transparency. From those ruins, Bridgewater was not merely rebuilt. It became a laboratory of thought, where mistakes were not condemned but mined as assets. And in that empty office, a conceptual bridge between pride and humility was laid, its first stone set. One day, it would become among the most influential philosophies of management and investing of our time. There are nights of work when the world around seems to fade away, leaving only a single lamp, a solitary human being, and a question that has yet to find its answer. That night in Boston was just such a night. Peter Lynch sat amid reports as dense as a forest, trying to listen to the market's true heartbeat. And in the moment when the faint mist of confusion brushed against the window pane, time itself opened a small crack. A gentle footstep from 2,000 years ago entered the modern room. Socrates arrived, not because he knew the answer, but because he knew that Peter carried within him a question real enough to summon a philosopher back into the world.
You say, invest in what you know, but have you truly understood yourself?
Lynch falters briefly at what he has just heard.
Who's speaking? Only one who seeks truth. I hear you teach others to invest through understanding. I wish to ask, what do you truly understand about that understanding?
I believe ordinary people can do better than Wall Street if they invest in what they see every day, stores they shop in, products they use.
So you believe the familiar is wiser than the unfamiliar?
Yes, a mother in a supermarket knows which companies are winning. A factory worker knows which products are selling. They have an edge that Wall Street analysts often lack.
But do they know why those products sell? Or do they merely see that they are selling?
Lynch pauses for a moment.
I suppose most only see the result, not the cause.
Then they invest by belief, not by knowledge. And you, Lynch, what do you invest with?
With experience. I visit companies, speak with managers, listen, observe, feel.
Good. But have you noticed that the more you understand, the more you begin to doubt yourself?
Yes. Sometimes I'm no longer sure what's right. The more reports I read, the more confused I become.
Because knowledge without humility breeds the illusion of control, and the investor who believes he controls the market is the one most controlled by it.
I see it now. When I tell people invest in what you know, what I truly want them to learn is the limit of what they know.
You have learned faster than I expected, Peter. The familiar does not make you rich, it makes you calm. And calm in a chaotic world is the greatest advantage of all.
Lynch gives a gentle smile.
Do you think investing is a form of philosophy?
Of course. Philosophy is the art of living well. Investing, when done rightly, is also the art of living well, knowing how to wait, how to have enough, how to know who you are.
Peter Lynch looked up to find the figure before him had vanished. Only the note on the desk remained, the breeze stirring it gently. A new line had been added, the ink slightly trembling. Invest in what you understand, and understand that you don't understand everything. After Socrates left Boston, the Magellan Fund continued its legendary run, averaging more than 29% per year over 13 years. But what truly defined Peter Lynch was not the number, it was his clarity of mind. He taught people that one need not know everything to invest successfully, only to understand enough and remain disciplined enough. In today's world, flooded with information, perhaps knowing less but knowing it deeply remains the rarest form of intelligence.
There are nights when the city sinks into silence, leaving only a single person seated before his own notes, carrying a question that refuses to leave. That night in New York was such a night. Jack Schwager bowed over the manuscript of Market Wizards, wondering why the wizards he had met seemed to grasp something he himself had not yet touched. At the very moment when uncertainty filled the room, time opened a slender thread. A cloaked figure stepped out from 2,000 years ago, light as breath, drawn toward the one who carried within him a question real enough to summon a philosopher back into the world. I hear you have finished a book about people who can read the market, Jack. Is that so?
Schwager flinches slightly, then steadies himself, as if accustomed to strange occurrences.
Yes, I interviewed them. People with extraordinary records, earning millions, even billions of dollars. I wanted to know what makes them different.
And have you found the answer? At first, I thought it was systems, formulas, models, tactics. But then I discovered something strange. They are completely different from one another. One buys when everyone sells, another sells when everyone buys,
One relies on intuition, another on computers. One trades every day, another acts only a few times a year.
Then what keeps you searching?
I believe there must be a common denominator, something that makes a wizard regardless of the wand he uses. And what is it? Only one thing. They know exactly who they are. I have seen this often. Humans travel far, yet rarely inward. How do they understand themselves? Very deeply. They know their strengths and weaknesses. They know whether they cannot tolerate large losses or whether they become euphoric after a few winning trades. They know whether they are suited for long-term trends or short-term trading, and they do not try to become someone else. They trade in alignment with their own nature.
So you have realized what many on Wall Street refuse to accept. They try to defeat others when the first opponent they must conquer is themselves.
Jack bows his head, his eyes lingering on his softly trembling hands.
You mean trading isn't about the market, but about ourselves?
Exactly. The market is only a mirror. Losses are not punishments. They merely expose greed, fear, and lack of discipline. Victories, too, only reflect inner steadiness and self-knowledge. But that makes me uneasy, Socrates. If the market is a mirror, doesn't that mean every mistake is my own? Yes, and that is precisely how humans grow. A true trader does not ask, why did the market do this? He asks, what does my reaction to the market reveal about me? So, you're saying the market wizards are not geniuses who predict prices correctly? Oh no. They are people who have stopped letting the market rule their minds. When others tremble at price movements, they remain calm. When others crave quick riches, they slow down. So, what they do is extraordinary, yet their essence is very human? Not superhuman, but supremely aware. They train self-understanding to the point where the market can no longer drag them into chaos.
Then, in the end, the market wizards is not a story about godlike minds?
No. It is a story about ordinary people who dare to face what most prefer to avoid in the dark.
Greed, fear, self-deception,
and the false belief that we can control the future.
Jack closes his eyes, silent for a few seconds, as if gathering his emotions.
If that is so, do wizards truly exist?
They do, but they do not control the market. They control themselves. That is the only magic life offers.
Then this book, I thought I was writing about finance. It turns out I was writing about something deeper?
Socrates gently places his hand on Jack's shoulder.
You have written a book of life philosophy for an age of chaos. A book that reminds us no one loses because of the market. People lose because they do not understand themselves.
Jack bowed his head. A long silence followed. When he looked up, Socrates had dissolved into the darkness as if he had never been there at all. That night, Jack Schwager sat for hours in his small New York room. He looked at the thick manuscript, stories, trades, secrets so many chased, and suddenly saw them as mere outer layers. For the core of all success, from ancient Athens to modern Wall Street, still circles around a simple question Socrates left us millennia ago. Do you truly know who you are? Perhaps only by answering that can one step into the market, without losing oneself. There are strange moments when a person sits alone in the night,
carrying within a question so real that it touches the invisible boundary between two eras. That night in Cambridge was one of them. Paul Samuelson bent over an unfinished manuscript where a thought flickered between chaos and order. Could the market be wiser than any individual genius? At that very moment, a thin seam in time quietly opened, light as mist, still as a breath. A cloaked figure stepped into the room as if from 2,000 years ago, to speak with a man who longed for a truly honest answer. Socrates had come, not to resolve the paradox, but to ask the question that would let it reveal itself.
Outside, an autumn wind brushed the window panes, carrying the rustle of falling leaves. Paul Samuelson sat pensively before a cup of cold coffee, sketching a line on a sheet of paper. Markets do not need geniuses to function. They are efficient precisely because humans cannot know everything. A quiet voice sounded behind him, familiar, resonant, and beyond time.
You are writing about an efficient market, a place where prices reflect everything that humans know?
Samuelson pauses for a beat, then returns to calm.
Yes. I believe that in a world of information, no individual can know more than the collective. And if that is so, no one can consistently beat the market.
A fascinating belief, Paul. But tell me, if everyone were rational and acted the same way, would the market still move?
No, Socrates. Markets exist precisely because humans are imperfect, because of fear, greed, and error. It is this very chaos that gives rise to overall order. So you believe that order can emerge from chaos? Exactly. Like a forest, each tree grows randomly, competes for light, claims space, sheds its leaves. Yet from a distance, the forest grows in harmony. The market is the same. It is the collective wisdom of countless individual mistakes.
A thought that would make Plato reconsider the world of forms. Perhaps not all order comes from perfect reason. Some order can arise only when humans are free to err.
Samuelson gazes into the distance.
Yes. I think that when people try to control markets, they commit an arrogant mistake. Markets do not need heroes or leaders. They self-balance, like water finding its level. And what of those who try to predict, who claim to read the market? They are chasing an illusion. An efficient market does not mean a perfect one. It means no one can reliably know more than others in a durable way. So, if all prices are reasonable, where, then, is the opportunity to learn? In the small deviations, where theory has yet touched reality. When one invests, one does not seek certainty, but a probability reasonable enough to trust time. Thus, what matters is not beating the market, but staying with it long enough for it to serve you.
Socrates looks up, his eyes glowing with quiet satisfaction.
You are saying the very thing I taught my students in Athens, Paul. No one possesses absolute truth, but if we learn to dialogue with uncertainty, we may live wisely. Perhaps my theory is merely a modern way of saying this. Truth resides in the collective, not in any single individual. And when each person learns to trust the aggregated power of communal reason, rather than searching for a genius to lead, society, like the market, becomes freer and fairer.
After that conversation, Samuelson returned to his desk. He wrote the final line of his manuscript, a line that would reshape investment thinking for half a century. The investment game is so fair that even the smartest players cannot win it consistently. Outside, dawn began to break. Socrates departed into the mist, smiling. He had just witnessed one of humanity's rare moments, when philosophy and science spoke in unison. True freedom arises only when we accept our limits.
There are afternoons when the fading sunlight seems to pause, opening a silence wide enough for a genuine question to find its voice. That afternoon in Princeton University was such a moment. Burton Malkiel walked slowly beneath the oak trees, carrying within him an idea that was steadily taking shape. Does intelligence truly exist in the market? And at the very instant he stopped beside the trunk of a great tree, the mist seemed to split the air itself. A cloaked figure approached, calm, ancient, and bearing the curiosity of Athens, drawn to a man who carried within him a question that Socrates had asked himself 2,000 years earlier.
I hear you once said, a blindfolded monkey throwing darts at a list of stocks could beat most professional investors. Is that truly so?
Malkiel smiles faintly, as if he had anticipated the question.
Yes, sir. I never meant it as an insult. I only wish to say this. The market is highly efficient. Stock prices already reflect nearly all available information. Choosing individual stocks over the long run is little different from a game of chance.
Then you believe in randomness?
I believe in the rationality of the crowd. No individual is always right, but in aggregate, the market is rarely foolish.
A crowd that is not foolish. That sounds curious. For I have seen crowds cheer as they stone an innocent man, or chase illusory values without understanding their essence. The crowd may be wise on average, but can the individual within it learn anything?
You touched the heart of it, Socrates. Market efficiency does not mean each participant is enlightened. It simply means that few, if any, can consistently outperform the collective.
So the real game is not defeating others, but accepting oneself as part of a larger system.
Exactly. That is why I advocate passive investing. Don't try to be smarter than the market. Join it. Buy the whole basket rather than picking individual apples.
Socrates nods gently, as if acknowledging what he has just heard.
Fascinating. You remind me of an old lesson. When one cannot control the river, the wisest course is to learn how to swim with it. But tell me, Burton, if everyone swims with the current, who will swim against it to keep it in balance?
Malkiel reflects for a moment.
Perhaps those who believe they are smarter than the market. Traders, hedge funds, analysts, they are precisely what allows the market to remain efficient.
So even those who lose help create the wins of others. Just as in society, the mistaken provide lessons for the correct. No one is without purpose.
How curious! You've just explained efficient market theory in the language of ethics.
Because markets, like the human soul, operate by a single principle. Order emerges from chaos when each element is honest about its role.
The market is a mirror reflecting humanity itself, greed, fear, expectations, and belief.
And sometimes a mindless monkey reflects the truth more faithfully than a calculating human being.
Both men laughed.
Oak leaves continued to fall as the sunset gilded the bronze statues of thinkers nearby. Burton Malkiel is often mocked for the dart-throwing monkey metaphor, but few grasp its deeper message. The market does not reward intelligence, it rewards discipline. In a world obsessed with beating others, Socrates reminds us that wisdom lies not in winning, but in understanding which game we are playing. Perhaps if that monkey knew it was merely throwing darts, it would be far wiser than many brilliant investors, busy deceiving probability and themselves. There are twilight afternoons when the slanting light seems to open a thin seam in time, wide enough for someone from a distant world to step across, drawn by a question still unanswered. That afternoon in Princeton University was just such a moment. Daniel Kahneman sat by the window, carrying within him a troubling reflection on the most fragile thing in the human mind, the illusion that we are rational. And in that barely perceptible pause, the mist seemed to part, allowing Socrates to enter, calm, profound, seeking the man who was wrestling with the mind's own invisible traps. Daniel Kahneman sat by the window, watching students stride across the lawn. Beside him lay the unfinished manuscript of Thinking, Fast and Slow. His eyes carried the unease of someone who had glimpsed the most dangerous thing in the human mind, the illusion that we are rational. The door opened softly. A man in a white cloak entered, holding an oil lamp.
I see a battle in your eyes, Daniel. Whom are you fighting?
Kahneman raises an eyebrow, revealing his surprise.
Human beings themselves, sir, or rather the flaws in their minds.
Flaws in the mind? I thought humans were thinking creatures.
They believe they are thinking, but in truth they are reacting. I call it System 1, fast, intuitive, and riddled with error.
And there is a System 2, I presume, the slower, more rational part.
Yes, but it is lazy. Most of the time we let System 1 take the wheel. It is what makes investors buy high, sell low, and believe they are smarter than the crowd.
Then the problem is not stupidity, but the illusion of intelligence. People do not fear being wrong, they fear admitting they are wrong.
Exactly. I call it confirmation bias. They seek only information that reinforces what they already believe. When they lose money, they console themselves, the market will come back.
Just as I once saw in Athens. People trusted prophecies even when all evidence pointed otherwise. Tell me, Daniel, can we help them see through their own illusions?
I have tried for a lifetime through experiments and models, but the truth is this: knowledge alone is not enough to correct behavior.
Indeed. I once said, knowing oneself is the beginning of wisdom. You are saying that knowing is not enough. One must act as someone who knows.
Yes, Even when we understand our biases, we still fall into them. Humans cannot escape their minds. They can only be humble before them.
Humility before the mind. A beautiful thought. You remind me of a game in the markets of Athens. People guessed the price of a jar of wine, and the average of all guesses proved most accurate.
Can that be? That is precisely the wisdom of crowds. I demonstrated it myself. But crowds are wise only when individuals err in different ways. When they err in the same direction, they create bubbles.
So when everyone believes they are right, that is precisely when the world is wrong.
And that is the tragedy of markets, Socrates. No one admits they are under an illusion until the money disappears.
Then perhaps your true lesson is not for investors alone, but for humanity. Wisdom does not lie in speed, but in the ability to pause and ask, am I deceiving myself?
Kahneman fell silent. The last light of day streamed through the window, illuminating the open manuscript, paused mid-sentence. Even an intelligent person can do foolish things when emotion takes the floor. Socrates gently extinguished the oil lamp and smiled. You have lit another lamp in the mind of humanity, Daniel. When Socrates left Princeton, Daniel Kahneman remained seated, gazing quietly at the fading sky. In a world where people believe they control everything, Kahneman taught us to accept that we cannot even fully control ourselves, and that acceptance is the true beginning of wisdom. The cognitive errors he uncovered did more than change how we invest. They changed how we understand human nature itself. Investing does not begin with the market, but with correcting the errors in one's own mind. There are autumn mornings when the mist falls so slowly that one feels time itself has opened a narrow passage, just wide enough for an ancient soul to step through, seeking someone who carries a question no one else wishes to hear. That morning at Yale University was such a moment. Robert Schiller sat beneath golden leaves, weighed down by the loneliness of one who sees what the world is not yet ready to face. That bubbles are not inflated by data, but by human fear and hope. And as he let out a quiet sigh, the seam of time opened, allowing Socrates to step in, his gaze penetrating every illusion.
You look as though you are fighting something, Robert. Is it yourself or the beliefs of others?
Schiller smiles wearily.
Perhaps both. I'm trying to tell them that markets are not always rational, that people do not buy with reason alone, but with emotion. Yet on Wall Street, saying such things is almost heretical.
Heretical? So in your age, the gods no longer dwell on Olympus, but reside instead in numbers?
That's not far from the truth. They worship market efficiency, rational cash flows, and forecasting models. But I see every model tremble when it confronts human fear or greed.
Then tell me, what truly creates a bubble? Money or illusion?
Both. But deeper still is collective belief, a story people tell one another until they themselves believe it. Bubbles are inflated not only with capital, but with emotion. I see. So your markets are not unlike religion. They have followers, rituals, doctrines, and even fanaticism.
Schiller reflects for a moment.
You may be right. People don't just buy stocks, they buy hope, buy self-validation. When they grow rich, they believe they are smarter, more virtuous, more deserving. But when the market collapses, they feel betrayed by the very belief they embraced. And it is only then that they may glimpse the truth. You know, Robert, I once saw the crowds of ancient Athens cheer for war because they believed themselves invincible, just as crowds on Wall Street cheer buy more because they believe prices can only rise. Both are intoxicated by the same illusion, the immortality of belief.
Schiller drops his gaze to the coffee, smiling thoughtfully.
Perhaps that is simply human nature. People need a story to cling to, yet that very story eventually carries them away. So what will you do, Robert, when the world around you is drunk on such sweet illusion? I will keep telling the counter-story, not to extinguish belief, but to remind people that belief itself must be questioned. I will teach students that value lies not only in returns, but in understanding oneself.
Socrates smiles calmly.
Then you are sowing the seeds of philosophy in financial soil. I am glad to see the spirit of Athens still alive in you. And perhaps the quiet awareness of people like you is the true compound interest humanity earns over time.
When Socrates departed, Schiller remained seated by the cafe terrace, watching leaves drift slowly onto the mist-damp pavement. He did not know who the man he had spoken with truly was, only that a strange calm had risen within him, as if his anxiety over market irrationality had transformed into a lesson about life itself. For in the end, the market is not wrong, it merely reflects human psychology. And the passive investor, the one who does not try to control the market, is precisely the one who has learned philosophy's deepest lesson. We cannot control the world, but we can learn to govern our own minds. There are mornings when the young sunlight still trembles on the surface of the desk, as if time itself were hesitating to open a narrow crack through which something irrational, yet profoundly true, might enter. That morning in Chicago was one of them. Richard Thaler bent over the undulating curves of human behavior, patterns that puzzled him more than any economic model ever could. And at the very moment he let out a quiet sigh, the seam of time gently parted, allowing Socrates to step in, carrying with him a question that has endured for 2,000 years. Why do human beings know what is right and yet still fail to do what is right? In a small office cluttered with papers and whiteboards scribbled with the word nudge, Richard Thaler was frowning at a chart depicting the saving behavior of Americans. The curve did not rise as he had hoped. Instead, it wavered erratically, much like the moods of people holding their paychecks at the end of each month. The door opened. A bearded man in a white robe stepped in with a gentle smile.
I see you are studying human nature, Richard.
It seems people are still as complicated as they were 2,000 years ago, aren't they?
Thaler looks up, giving a slight shrug.
Perhaps even worse, sir. They know they should save, yet they never do. They know they should invest for the long term, yet they jump in and out of the market as if hypnotized.
Do you think they are foolish?
Not at all. They're simply human. They procrastinate, are driven by emotion, and cling to the illusion that I'll start next month.
So they know what is good, yet fail to do what is good. In Athens, we called this akrasia, weakness of will. How do you intend to treat them? I don't try to change human nature. I just give it a gentle push in the right direction. A gentle push? You speak like a shepherd.
Perhaps I do, but instead of a whip, I use design. For example, if we want people to save, we make enrollment in retirement plans the default. Anyone who doesn't want it can opt out. And most people never do.
Ah, you make it easier to do the right thing without taking away freedom. A kind of freedom within order.
Exactly. I call it libertarian paternalism, guided freedom. Much like how you guided your students to ask the right questions rather than forcing them to believe you.
You flatter me a bit, but the idea is fascinating. I once asked the citizens of Athens, "Do you choose wine or water?" They said, "Wine." I asked again, "Do you want to be sober or drunk?" They said, "Sober." So why did they still choose wine? You have just given me the answer, because they were never nudged toward what they truly wanted.
And that is the eternal problem. People want long-term happiness, yet choose short-term pleasure. My task is not to teach them rationality, but to help rationality win its battle against emotion.
Then do you see the nudge as a form of applied philosophy, where ideas become action?
Exactly. I don't need people to understand economic models. They only need to save a little more, invest a little better, and stop sabotaging themselves. The world would be a much better place.
Socrates nods slightly.
You remind me of something I once said. No one willingly does evil. They merely do not know what is good. You say, instead, they know what is good, but need help to do it. We are speaking the same language, only in different eras.
Thaler squints, studying the moment.
Then do you think philosophy also needs nudges, Socrates? Of course, but my nudge is a question. You use systems to guide behavior. I use questions to guide awareness. Both lead people toward the light. We simply hold the torch differently. Human beings do not need to be perfect in order to evolve. They only need to be nudged at the right moment and asked the right question. After that meeting, Thaler added a small line to the manuscript of nudge. A good nudge is one in which the person being nudged believes it was their own idea. And Socrates, before leaving Chicago, stood watching the crowds flow through the streets. He smiled. How strange, after thousands of years, humans still need someone to help them do what they already know is right. Perhaps, in this age of technology and behavior, the philosophies of Socrates and Thaler meet at a single point. Not to turn humans into machines, but to help them understand themselves, accept themselves, and gently adjust themselves in a humane way. There are rainy afternoons when the world seems draped in a gray veil, slowing every movement, as if reality itself were questioning whether it truly exists. That afternoon in London in 1987 was one such moment. George Soros stood before a flickering electronic board glowing red. On one side, a cup of cold coffee, on the other, the unfinished manuscript of The Alchemy of Finance. And just when he thought that only he and the rain were left conversing with one another, an ancient voice, seeming to arise from the far side of reason, spoke up, opening a meeting between two souls who both doubted what people called reality. In the quiet moment, a voice sounded behind him, deep, still, and sharp as a blade cutting through the fog.
You call your book The Alchemy of Finance. Do you believe that human beings can turn belief into gold?
Soros hesitates slightly, turning to look at the newcomer.
Perhaps you are right. The market is not a mirror reflecting reality. It is a machine that creates reality based on human beliefs. A bold statement. But tell me, if the market does not reflect truth, what does it reflect? Expectations, fear, and illusion. When investors believe prices will rise, they buy. Their buying pushes prices up. Rising prices confirm their belief that they were right. Belief creates action. Action reinforces belief. That is reflexivity.
So, in your view, the market is a place where illusion validates itself.
Exactly. It does not seek truth, it creates a temporary version of truth. That is why all theories of market efficiency are illusions, because human beings do not act rationally.
Interesting. But do you see the contradiction? If the market merely reflects belief, then you, the one betting on its distortions, are also acting on your own belief, are you not?
Indeed. I am part of the reflexive process as well. When I believe a bubble is about to burst, that belief influences others, and sometimes my belief itself helps the bubble burst sooner.
So, it could be said that you are not merely observing reality, you are intervening in it.
Yes, no one stands outside. In finance, the observer always changes what is being observed. That is why I often say, I don't try to be right, I try to be less wrong than others. A remarkably wise confession. You understand that knowledge in markets can never be perfect, because the humans within them are never perfect. You know, I once thought I could uncover the laws governing the universe of markets, but the more money I made, the more I realized it was not about formulas, but about collective psychology. And I came to see that the biggest moves come not from information, but from emotion. I once told my students in Athens, people do not fear the unknown, they fear losing what they believe they already know. Is this also true of your investors?
Soros's eyes deepen, as if the market has just shifted in his mind.
Very much so. When they believe the market is always rational, they fail to prepare for when it loses its mind, and that is precisely when I make money.
So, your success is built on understanding that everyone can be wrong, including yourself.
Exactly. I do not seek certainty, I seek flexibility. People lose because they cling to absolute truth, while the market never stands still long enough for such a thing to exist.
You remind me of the Greeks who debated reality and illusion. They said that if enough people believe in a falsehood, that falsehood becomes reality. Is your market the same?
Precisely. A financial bubble is simply alive that the crowd has fallen in love with.
Socrates rises and walks to the window, watching the rain as if contemplating time itself.
Yet even so,
Do you believe that beneath this chaos there exists a deeper truth, independent of prices? Perhaps the truth about human nature itself. The market is only a magnifying mirror of what lies within us: arrogance, fear, and the desire to control what cannot be controlled. Then, if you understand this, do you still wish to beat the market? No. Now I only wish to understand it, and to understand myself. For when one knows who one is, even losing the game does not mean losing one's soul. Well said, George. You have turned reflexivity into philosophy. But remember, the highest reflexivity is not between man and market, but between a human being and his own soul. Perhaps that is the true alchemy I have been seeking all along.
In the world of modern finance, Soros stands as a symbol of intellectual flexibility, someone willing to admit error in order to evolve. But in this dialogue, Socrates showed him, and all of us, the limits of human intelligence when confronting collective belief. For markets may reflect prices, but only philosophy reflects the soul. And perhaps passive investors are not passive because they are weak, but because they are humble enough to accept this truth. No one controls reality, but everyone can control their response to it. There are mornings when the wind gathers in a peculiar way, as if trying to pull human beings back to their most primordial questions. That morning in Manhattan was one such moment. Streams of people hurried along Wall Street, moving as if they were trying to outrun the uncertainty within themselves. And in a corner of a small cafe, amid the hissing steam of the espresso machine, Nassim Taleb was flipping through the draft of The Black Swan. He did not know that just minutes later, a figure from ancient Athens would pull up the chair across from him, opening a dialogue about the unknowable, the very thing modern humans try to escape, yet are always drawn back to.
I have heard that you believe the world is governed not by what we know, but by what cannot be known. A rather paradoxical claim for human beings who pride themselves on their knowledge.
Taleb is surprised, as if a long-held assumption has just been touched.
Paradoxical? Perhaps it is simply reality. People build entire financial systems on predictive models, only to see them collapse because of a single event they never imagined. They live under the illusion that the world can be measured, while the world itself can never be fully measured. Then how, in your view, should human beings live when they cannot know what will happen? Should they simply surrender to fate? No. I do not teach people to surrender to chaos. I teach them to befriend it. I call this anti-fragility, the ability to grow stronger after being harmed. The world cannot be predicted, but we can prepare. Prepare how when one cannot know what is coming? By humility in the face of not knowing. We break risks into smaller pieces, invest cautiously, so that when a black swan appears, we are not swept away. And when luck arrives, we are flexible enough to benefit from it. That sounds much like the philosophy of moderation I once taught. No extremism in action, no illusion in belief. But tell me, Taleb, if we are always afraid of the unknown,
Will we dare to create, to take risks, to reach for something great? I am not afraid of the unknown. I am afraid of the stupidity of those who think they know. The one who can say, "I don't know," is the truly wise one. By contrast, the experts who draw charts and speak of probabilities and standard deviations, they are the true prey of the black swan.
Socrates smiles calmly.
Fascinating. I once said, "I know that I know nothing." Perhaps you are a philosopher of the modern age, still carrying that spirit amid people intoxicated with data.
Perhaps I am just a risk trader who reads philosophy. But yes, we share a belief in the power of humility. The problem with modern humans is their addiction to the illusion of control. They believe that with enough intelligence and enough models, they can eliminate risk. Yet, the greatest risk comes precisely from the belief that they are safe.
Is that why you say, if something allows us to survive chaos, it will make us stronger?
Exactly. A body, an economy, or a soul, if never tested, will remain fragile. We only learn to stand after falling. We only understand peace after tasting chaos.
But Taleb, are you not contradicting yourself? If black swans are unpredictable, how can we possibly prepare for them?
I do not prepare for any specific black swan. I prepare for any black swan. I do not try to predict the future. I build my life so that whatever the future brings, I will not collapse. That is the difference between controlling the future and surviving it.
Socrates nods gently.
A strategy worth contemplating. I once was asked, "What is philosophy for?" I replied, "To learn how to die calmly." You teach, instead, to learn how to survive amid chaos. Perhaps you and I are not so different after all.
Perhaps. Socrates, you were condemned for asking questions that made others uncomfortable. I am attacked for saying that the overly intelligent can also be foolish. Both of us make the world uneasy, simply by reminding it that reality does not submit to reason.
Your world is full of data, computers, and algorithms. Mine was full of myth, belief, and philosophy. Yet it seems that people in both eras fear the same thing, uncertainty. Perhaps because they want to control everything, yet cannot even control themselves.
Exactly. I once said, nothing is more dangerous than someone with a perfect theory of the world. Because when the world refuses to follow that theory, such a person will destroy everything just to prove himself right. Then, if humans cannot predict and cannot control, what is the purpose of knowledge? Knowledge is not for prediction, but for humility. When we understand that the world lies beyond our grasp, we begin to live more intelligently, simply, resiliently, and with room for error.
Socrates turns his gaze toward the window, sunlight slanting through the glass.
Taleb, perhaps what we are speaking of is not only investing, but life itself. The one who seeks absolute safety lives in fear. The one who accepts risk lives in freedom.
And the one who knows risk is unavoidable, yet still moves forward, truly understands life. For he knows that every failure, every surprise, every shock is a lesson no school can teach.
The cafe slowly empties. Dust settles among the glass towers. Socrates stood and placed a hand on Taleb's shoulder.
You make me realize that perhaps the black swan is not an enemy, but a teacher. For only when darkness appears does one recognize the light within.
And I have learned from you, Socrates, that the one who knows that he knows nothing is the only one not destroyed by the unknown.
As Socrates left the cafe, he looked up at the New York sky and saw a flock of birds flying in formation. Among them, one bird with pure white feathers stood out. He smiled. The black swan Taleb spoke of was perhaps still there, hidden among the crowd that believed it had already understood the world. And perhaps true freedom does not come from knowing more, but from daring to live fully, even when we do not know what awaits us ahead. There are afternoons when the rain does not fall to soak the streets, but to reveal the thoughts people usually keep hidden. That day in Seattle was wrapped in a thin veil of mist, as if time itself were whispering softly, "Slow down, just a little." In the corner of a small cafe, Morgan Housel sat by the window writing the opening lines of The Psychology of Money. He did not yet know that when he looked up, he would see a figure in a white robe, standing still as if he had just stepped out of another age, carrying questions that no financial chart could ever answer.
You are writing about money, yet it does not seem that you write in order to make money. So what draws you to something most people worship, but which you seek to decode?
Morgan Housel smiles faintly.
I don't think I'm writing about money, sir. I'm writing about people, just through the language of money. Money is a mirror that reflects our nature: greed, fear, hope, and even kindness.
And in that mirror, what do you see?
I see that people don't invest rationally. They invest through stories. Someone doesn't buy a stock because they truly understand it, but because they want to believe in something, that they'll be safe, that they'll be free, that they'll be happier than others.
Interesting. In Athens, I once saw people wearing amulets, believing they would protect them from misfortune. How is that any different from investors clinging to stocks, believing they will bring peace to their future?
In truth, it isn't very different. We are all buying beliefs. The difference is which beliefs make us free and which make us dependent.
A fine question. Do you have an answer?
I think the free person is the one who knows how much is enough, because most people lose their freedom not from lacking money, but from not knowing when to stop once they have enough.
Then what is enough, Morgan? Is it a number?
No, sir. Enough is when you can sleep well, not because you are richer than others, but because you no longer need to prove anything to anyone.
Socrates turns his gaze toward the distance.
I once told the people of Athens, the happy man is not the one who has much, but the one who needs little. You are saying the same thing, only now people measure happiness with numbers.
And the paradox is they accumulate more numbers yet feel less free. When their accounts grow, so does their greed. With 1 million, they dream of 10. With 10 million, they fear losing it.
I see it now. The financial market is, in truth, nothing more than a vast map of human fear and greed. But the wise are not swept away. They observe themselves within it.
Exactly, sir. I once wrote, "The best financial advice isn't found in charts, but in the mirror." People don't need to be smarter. They need to be calmer.
Then do you believe there is a way to invest that both grows wealth and brings peace of mind?
Yes, sir. It is an approach that reflects human nature rather than challenges it. Passive investing, letting the market work for you while you devote your energy to living.
Socrates' eyes light up as if he has just stumbled upon a fine question.
So freedom does not come from understanding the entire market, but from understanding oneself.
Yes, and money, when seen correctly, is a tool to buy time, not status.
The poorest person is the one with a great deal of money, but no time to live. A new definition of wealth, worth deep reflection.
In my time, the rich were those who owned land. In yours, the rich are those who own stocks. But in every era, the truly wealthy are those who are free. And perhaps true freedom is when we no longer need to prove that we are right, only to live in alignment with who we are.
Socrates stands and slowly prepares to leave.
You have written a book about the psychology of money, but I hope that one day you will write the psychology of freedom. For money is only the opening chapter of a larger story, the story of the human soul learning how to become free. Sir, perhaps this very conversation is the first chapter of that book.
As Socrates faded into the Seattle rain, Morgan Housel remained seated by the window, as if the philosopher's questions were still suspended in the air. The dialogue between two people from different eras was not only about money, but about the hidden corners within each of us: fear, greed, and the longing for freedom. Perhaps in the end, money does not change human nature. It merely magnifies what we have never dared to face. There are afternoons when the light falls so gently that it feels as if the world is trying to say something very small, yet very true. In that quiet moment, beneath trees tinted by the colors of sunset, J.L. Collins placed 2 cups of hot coffee on a wooden table as a simple ritual of those who have found abundance in having little. He was not at all surprised to see a man in a white robe approach, eyes that seemed to have passed through thousands of storms of the human soul. Socrates sat down, calm and unhurried, as if this conversation had been written long ago. A meeting between 2 people who believe that freedom is not a destination we reach, but a way we choose to walk.
I have heard that you teach people to become free through a simple path. That greatly intrigues me, J.L. In my time, freedom was the destination of the soul, not of the purse. Yet you seem to say the opposite, that one must have money in order to be free.
Not exactly, Socrates. Money cannot buy freedom, but it can buy space. The space in which we no longer have to sell our souls to fear and scarcity. I don't teach people to love money. I teach them to make money serve them, instead of becoming its slave.
That sounds much like something I once said. The rich are not those who possess much, but those who need little. So this simple path you speak of, is it merely a life of fewer desires?
Partly, yes. But I go a little further. The simple path to freedom is knowing what is enough, saving consistently, and investing wisely. I tell people, spend less than you earn, invest the surplus, avoid debt, and wait.
And wait. I hear the echo of Munger in those words. Does every path to freedom require time?
Absolutely. But what matters even more is simplicity. People love to complicate everything and then complain that freedom is a luxury. I simply say, invest in index funds, hold them long-term, don't touch them, don't panic.
That's all? Can such a concise philosophy really lead people to freedom?
Simple, but not easy. Because people are not fighting the market, they are fighting their own emotions.
When prices rise, they grow greedy. When prices fall, they grow afraid. They don't trust the future enough to remain patient.
I understand. In my time as well, there were those who chased their emotions, eager to win every argument, yet unable to win against themselves. Perhaps in investing, too, the winner is not the one who predicts best, but the one who masters himself.
Exactly, Socrates. That's why I always tell my daughter, investing is not about getting rich, it's about not becoming poor. Because freedom does not come from having more than others, but from needing less than they do.
Socrates nods slowly.
A profound thought. Tell me then, why did you choose the simple path when the world is intoxicated with complexity?
Because I once lived the opposite way. When I was young, I chased status, hot stocks, and special advice. I made money, then lost money, and only then realized you don't need to be smarter than others, only wiser than your former self. When I began investing in what I truly understood, index funds, compound growth, time, freedom gradually arrived.
So the path to freedom lies not in choosing the right stock, but in choosing the right way to live?
Even more so, it lies in choosing the right philosophy of life. I see investing not as money-making, but as financial meditation. Each month, putting money into a fund, not out of greed, but with the knowledge that a seed planted today will bloom in the future. It cultivates calm, discipline, and freedom from anxiety.
It sounds like a form of training for the soul. You remind me of the Stoic idea of ataraxia, a state of tranquility untouched by external disturbances.
Exactly, Socrates. Financial freedom, properly understood, is a spiritual journey. When money no longer controls us, we can live according to our true values. And once we reach that freedom, there is no need to boast, no need to prove anything, only to live rightly.
Socrates looks out into the empty space ahead.
Your world has many conveniences, yet even more chains. I see now that the more intelligent people become, the easier it is for them to lose simplicity, and thus lose freedom.
That's true, Socrates. I often say, simplicity is never foolish. It is the mark of mature wisdom. Only when we understand deeply do we dare to let things go.
You remind me of my own words. The unexamined life is not worth living. And you teach people this. Unexamined wealth is not worth owning.
That may be so. And if I could add one more line to my philosophy, it would be this. Freedom is not having everything, but knowing that you need nothing more.
You have shown me something simple yet profound. Freedom does not lie at the end of a complicated road, but within each simple step along the way.
And when enough people realize that, Socrates, this world will carry far less fear.
As Socrates' figure fades into the dusk, J.L. Collins remains beneath the trees, his hand lightly touching the still warm cup of coffee. That dialogue between an ancient philosopher and a modern advocate of the simple path feels both a reminder and a quiet warning that freedom has never been the reward of those who run fastest, but the outcome for those who walk slowly, consciously, and with enough. And sometimes, in a world made loud by complexity, simplicity is the most striking, the most enduring, and the hardest thing to attain. There are moments when reality becomes so chaotic that it seems to crack open, revealing a deeper layer of truth beneath. The year 2008 was such a moment. Screens glowing red, streets weighed down by gloom, and panicked souls running for something, anything to hold on to, like startled birds caught in a storm. Amid that cold wind, in a room piled high with papers, a man in a white cloak appears, as if stepping out of another age, his eyes calm yet piercing, as though able to see through every illusion humanity has constructed. Socrates came to meet Michael Burry, who is carrying a great question. Why is it that the one who goes against the crowd is sometimes the only one who can truly see the path ahead?
You seem calm amid the storm, Michael. While the whole world is trembling, you are smiling. Did you foresee this?
I didn't foresee it, Socrates. I simply saw what others refused to look at. Everyone believed housing prices would rise forever. I don't believe in forever in finance. When the data says one thing and the crowd's emotions say another, I choose the data.
So you place no trust in people?
I place my trust in reality. People are often blinded by greed. They don't read the substance, only the headlines. No one wants to believe the system they rely on can collapse, just as the Greeks once believed Athens was eternal. But nothing's eternal, not even a mistaken belief.
I see two flames in your eyes, reason and loneliness. When people mocked you, when the entire market turned its back on you, what kept you steady?
Truth doesn't need a majority. If I believe something is right, I'll do it even if I'm alone. When I bet on the market's collapse, they called me insane. Investors withdrew, friends drifted away. But I knew this: if I feared isolation, I would never be right in a world full of illusions.
Do you think solitude is the price of wisdom?
Perhaps. Truth often lives in the shadows before it's acknowledged. People don't hate the foolish, they hate those who are right too early.
A bitter truth. Tell me then, is going against the crowd the right path for an investor?
No, Socrates. Going against the crowd just to be different is still being controlled by the crowd. The right path is independent thinking. If the truth aligns with the crowd, I'll walk with them. But if data, reason, and intuition tell me they're wrong, I must stop, even if I'm alone.
For one who walks independently, what is his strongest weapon?
Patience. The market can stay irrational longer than I expect, but in the end, reality always wins. For 2 years, I was treated like a clown, yet I held my position. Every night I stayed up until dawn, reading reports, examining bad debt, checking each mortgage. When everything finally collapsed, I didn't celebrate, I just exhaled. Reality had finally surfaced.
I once taught that the truly wise know that they do not know. Do you think confidence in your own forecast can become another illusion?
Absolutely. I'm never certain. I think in probabilities. When I see a 90% chance of collapse, I act as if it were 100%, but I still know there's a 10% chance I'm wrong. That's why I always keep a margin of safety and prepare for error. Absolute certainty is fragility.
That sounds close to Taleb's ideas about anti-fragility. Do you consider yourself a pessimist?
No, I'm just not blindly optimistic. I believe in cycles, in the restoration of order. Every system corrects itself through pain. Collapse isn't a catastrophe, it's a cleansing. Without it, greed would have no limits.
You've just echoed what I always taught. Evil does not destroy itself. It only grows until it collapses under its own weight. But tell me, Michael, after you were right, after billions flowed into your fund, were you happy?
Burry falls silent for a beat, then speaks.
Not very.
Money didn't make me happy, it only proved I wasn't crazy. After that, I closed the fund and left Wall Street. There, people worship profits, not truth. I wanted time for music, for family, the only things not priced in dollars.
A Greek philosopher once said, "When we have too much, we begin to lose ourselves." Perhaps a true investor isn't one who's great at making money, but one who understands what is enough.
Exactly. When I understood enough, I became free. When I needed to prove myself to others, I became a slave.
Socrates falls silent, gazing out the window. Outside, rain pours down, city lights blur. He turns back, eyes gentle yet piercing.
Michael, perhaps you are among the first of your age to grasp an ancient truth. Truth and freedom are never found in the crowd. You dared to be alone in order to be right. That is rare. But remember, never let being right turn into arrogance. The day we believe we cannot be wrong is the day we begin to err.
I understand. The market taught me that, just as a teacher teaches that wisdom lies not in answers, but in asking the right questions.
And today the question is this: would you dare to go against the current again, if this time there was no reward except peace of mind?
Bury speaks slowly after a pause.
If it was right, I still would.
The rain continued to fall beyond the window, washing away the red numbers that had once thrown the world into panic. In that small room, there was no cheer of a victor, only the quiet of someone who had faced reality to its very end. Michael Burry did not defeat the market. He merely waited patiently for illusion to collapse under its own weight. And Socrates, as always, left no advice behind, only a question hanging in the air. When the crowd grows euphoric again, will we have the courage to stop, to listen to reality, and to accept the loneliness of independent thought? There are mornings when sunlight falls into a small room in a strangely gentle way, shimmering, quiet, as if time itself is trying to say something. Late autumn in Brooklyn offered such a morning. And in the moment when light softly touched the unfinished manuscript of Your Money or Your Life, a thin breeze lifted the edge of a page, opening a narrow crack in time. From within that stillness, Socrates stepped in, not to lecture nor to judge, but to seek out a woman who was writing about something modern humans believe they already understand: how much their lives are truly worth. That morning, Socrates came to meet Vicki Robin. Brooklyn, New York. A late autumn morning. Sunlight shimmered through the window of Vicki Robin's small apartment. Outside, yellow leaves drifted softly onto the quiet street, the distant sound of cars dissolving into the air. Vicki sat at her desk, typing the final lines of Your Money or Your Life. In the stillness, a gentle breeze stirred the pages, and Socrates appeared.
I see you are writing about a choice between money and one's own life.
Vicki Robin hesitated for a moment, as if awakened from a stream of thought.
You've arrived at just the right moment. Yes, I am. People are trading away minute after minute of their lives to earn money, rarely realizing that what they are selling is time, the only thing that can never be bought back.
So, in your view, can money and time truly be compared?
They are not equal, yet they are constantly confused with one another. People believe they earn money in order to live, but in truth, they live in order to earn money. I want them to pause and look closely at how quickly they are spending their lives.
They fail to see it because they have never measured the true price of money. That is, how many hours of their lives it has cost them.
Exactly. I call it life energy. When people understand that every dollar spent represents a portion of their life, the way they spend, work, and dream begins to change.
A philosophy very close to my own, merely expressed in a different language. In Athens, I once asked my students, "Are you truly living or merely preparing to live?"
Vicky Robin looks up, her eyes alight with curiosity.
Yes, modern society keeps people so busy that they forget to live. They accumulate, invest, consume without knowing what they actually need.
What do you believe lies at the root of this?
Fear. People fear scarcity, loss, being left behind. Money becomes a painkiller for that fear, yet the more they have, the more dependent they become.
Socrates looks out into the empty space ahead.
How ironic. In my time, people were materially poor, but rich in time. Today, people are rich in money, but poor in life.
And they call that success. I want to redefine it. Success is when every minute of your life truly belongs to you.
And how does passive investing, now seen by many as a path to freedom, relate to what you are saying?
It's part of the larger picture. When we let money work for us instead of working for money, we reclaim time, and that is the first step toward living on our own terms. But if we accumulate without knowing when enough is enough, that freedom becomes another illusion.
Socrates nods gently.
So investing is a means, not the end. The end is meaningful time.
Exactly. In the end, the question is not how much money do I have, but how much life do I have in each day I live.
You are a true philosopher, Wiki, only writing in the language of the 20th century, while I spoke in that of 2,000 years ago. Yet I believe this: true philosophy does not live in books, but in how we use each second of our lives.
As Socrates rose to leave, he looked around the small room, devoid of expensive possessions, yet filled with light and calm. Vicky looked up, smiled gently, and returned to her writing. Freedom does not arrive when we have more, but when we need less. Outside the window, golden light poured over an old clock. The second hand kept moving, tick by tick, but for Vicky, time had changed hands.